Outside feedback is crucial to your editing process. Hey guys, I'm Marilyn and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about critique partners, alpha readers and beta readers, specifically my process of using these to get outside feedback in order to make my novel the best that it can be. Now, before we dive into today's content, I want to say sorry if there's any noise in the background. The wind in Cape Town is hectic today. Spring for us is basically the windy season, so yeah, not much I can do about that. And then before I dive into the process, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell if you want weekly writing advice videos and occasionally some great bonus content. Now, let's dive in. So first up, let's look at critique partners. This was the first step that I followed, and I only had one critique partner. So what I did is I put out a call for a critique partner on all of my social media platforms. I got around 6 or so responses. So with each person, I asked questions around which genre they write, whether they have critiquing experience, things like that. Eventually, out of the 6 candidates, I chose one that was the perfect critique partner for me. Her name is Kate August. She's amazing. I'll leave her Instagram below so you can follow her. And then I started this search, this call on social media about 2 months before I was finished with my self-editing process. So if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I am quite a slow writer. I draft slowly, I edit slowly, so you may think, but I'm only going to use a month to edit my manuscript. Well, for me it wasn't that easy, so 2 months before I finished self-editing, I started looking for the critique partner. So what we did is we exchanged full manuscripts and then gave each other 2 months to read through the manuscript and then provide a comprehensive critique later at the end. And then what's very important is that at the very outset, we gave each other specific questions that we had about the manuscript, specific things that we were a little worried about and that we would like answers to. That is so important because this helps the critique partner, which is you and the other person, to read through the manuscript with those questions in mind and really pay attention. And it's so nice to have your specific concerns addressed in the critique later. So Kate was great because she also sent me like weekly updates on where she is with the manuscript and just an overall what she liked, what she didn't like. And I also kept her updated in reply to those emails saying I'm at this point and I really like this character or whatever. Now this won't be everyone's cup of tea. You will have to sort the nitty-gritty details of how you give feedback out with your CP. Then at the end of the 2 months, we exchanged long critique letters. They were color-coded in terms of positive, neutral and negative feedback, and it was so comprehensive from both of our sides. You could tell that each of us really wanted to help the other make their book the best that it could be. So I read through the feedback carefully, looking at what I understood and agreed with, and also things that were mentioned by my alpha readers as well. Now I'll talk about alpha readers a bit later in this video. So not everything that your CP says will be something that you have to change. The ultimate decision is still with you. So if they say something like, I would make this character older, but you don't feel like that character should be older for the story, then you don't have to change it. But what is important is to give true deep consideration to everything that the CP has said. Don't just ignore it because it's not something you feel like you should change. Really read it, think about it, try to understand where the person is coming from, and then make an executive decision about whether that is something that you want to change or not. And then I went through my manuscript from start to finish with this feedback and the alpha readers feedback, which I'll get to, and I changed the things that needed to be changed. And then what I also want to add is that it's super important to take the positive feedback too. I think everyone is geared to kind of notice the negative, and that's what you need to fix. But it's super important to take in the positive as well, because knowing what your strengths are as a writer can also help you in future projects. So remember that feedback that you're getting is not just going to help you with this project, but future projects as well, because you'll know what your weaknesses and your strengths are, and maybe things like overused phrases or things like that that you didn't even notice you were using, you will now know in the next drafting process. Now, you can decide how many critique partners you want to have, and also the details of how you are going to exchange manuscripts and how you would like to receive feedback. Some people exchange chapters or bunches of chapters, like maybe 5 chapters at a time, and they leave in manuscript comments. Some critique partners actually physically edit things in the manuscript. It really is up to you and your critique partner. Also, I only used one critique partner, but there are many authors out there who use more than one. For me, it was just the fact that I wanted to critique something for that person as well, hence the term critique partner, and I didn't have time to critique more than one manuscript at that point, so I chose to go with just one, and she was an amazing critique partner, so I got a lot of feedback with that. And as I have alluded to, I also used alpha readers and beta readers to get more feedback. And then I found my critique partner on social media. So if you do not have a lot of social media platforms, or you don't have a lot of interaction on your platforms, then this might not be the best way for you to do it. But there are Facebook groups, Tumblr discussion groups, Discords, where you can ask for critique partners. And then you can also go for professional critique, where you pay someone who is a writer to critique your manuscript for you rather than exchanging manuscripts. And this is all about your time versus money ratio. I don't have much of either, but the professional critique was just too expensive for me, so I decided to go for an exchange. And also, what I forgot to mention, and this was actually the first thing I should have told you, is what is a critique partner? So a critique partner is a fellow writer who looks at your manuscript and gives their feedback on the positives and negatives of your novel. So a CP is not a reader. Well, most of the times writers are readers, but they are someone with writing experience. They write themselves and they critique your manuscript from the perspective of a writer. Then next up we have alpha readers. Now let me start with a definition this time. A lot of people use this term, and I think everyone uses it for different things. There's no conclusive definition of what an alpha reader is. So for me, I use this term to refer to people I know and trust that I give my manuscript at the same time as my critique partner. So for me, I used my mom and my best friend as alpha readers. So they are both avid readers, and I trusted that they would read the book with the sufficient attention needed and they would give me feedback on it. So like I said, I gave them the manuscript at the same time as I sent it off to my CP. So they provided me with feedback. With this, it took a bit more questioning and kind of interviewing to get that feedback out of them, because like I said, they are not writers who are familiar with the critiquing process. So I kind of had to draw some of the feedback out of them, but I made notes, detailed notes on everything that they said, and then I added that feedback to my critique partner's feedback and used it all simultaneously in my next round of edits to change what needed to be changed. So once again, you don't have to change everything that they comment on, just take it in and decide for yourself. Obviously, if it's something that the critique partner and the alpha readers notice, then it is probably worth editing because more than one person saw this as a flaw or a plot hole or whatever. And then finally, beta readers. So beta readers are readers, not necessarily writers, that read in your genre and age category that you get to give feedback. So here you're trying to get to the perspective of your target audience. So while I was working on the edits for my critique partner and alpha reader feedback, I put out a call for beta readers on my social media. And then I used a Google form to collect those applications, asking them about things like their age, what they like to read, why they would like to be a beta reader, things like that, and also setting out the process quite clearly, because the people who signed up for this needed to have the time and they needed to understand what the commitment of signing up meant. So I chose from those applications about 11 beta readers that kind of fit what my target audience was, while still trying to go for a little bit of diversity. So in this form, I also included a plot summary and trigger warnings, because you don't want people to go into reading your book and then tell you that they did not like X, Y, and Z, but that is a crucial point in your novel, or it is something that you could have put a trigger warning on for and gotten people who would not have had a specific problem with that. So my manuscript is around 120,000 words, so I decided to divide it into 6 weeks so I wouldn't give them too much to read at one time. So I divided my novel into 6 parts based on word count. So for each section, I created a Google Forms feedback form. So many of the questions are repeated through each form, but then there are also questions that are unique to that section. So in terms of the questions, I would ask things like, what would they rate the section out of 5 stars? What did they like? What did they dislike? Did this part entice them to read further? Was there anything confusing? And then I'd leave a big box for general feedback. So, and then in terms of the specific things, that would be things that maybe a critique partner or alpha reader raised and I wasn't sure about changing, or maybe it's something that I was just uncertain about. A big moment in the plot where I wanted to ask, did this have the impact that I wanted it to have? And then I also created a Google feedback form for the entire manuscript that they had to fill in at the end of week 6. And this was about what they thought about the entire book. So this was once again, what would they rate the book, their favorite part, their favorite character, whether anything was confusing, whether they found anything to be offensive, if they could change anything, what would they change, questions like that. I did this in advance. I created the forms in advance. Then a week before the beta reading process was to start, I sent out an email to all of the beta readers just confirming that they still wanted to be part of the process and setting out in detail what the process would entail. I also inquired about the time zone applicable to their locations, because as someone who lives in South Africa, I've become quite attentive to different time zones over the world, especially on social media and things like that, because most people tend to be in the US, but that's a conception that isn't always true. And then I sent a new section of the manuscript every Monday morning at a specific time. Friday morning I would send the feedback link, which they would then have to complete by Saturday evening. And then on Sunday I would sit and work through all the feedback. What I did with the feedback is that I consolidated the feedback into an edit document. It's not nice to get negative feedback, so you want to minimize the amount of times that you have to read through that feedback, because it can also sometimes be very subjective and in language that is not nice to read to you. So if you take all of the feedback and you put it in a neutral tone in your own words into an edit document, then that's just look at X, and it's not, I did not enjoy this, I felt that it should have been like this, in the way that the beta reader expressed their opinion. So that helped really a lot. So I would go, for example, the first section was chapters 1 to 6. So I would have an edit document with a heading chapters 1 to 6, and then put in bullet points all the things that I needed to look at. And I only chose those things that I decided to look at and to change. If I wasn't certain, I would just put a question mark next to it. But if it was something that obviously this person is not someone in my ideal target audience, or this is really just a subjective opinion, none of the other beta readers mentioned this, or maybe it contradicts what the other beta readers say or something like that, I wouldn't put it in the edit notes. The edit notes only have the things that I really need to look at and to change. So then once the beta readers gave their feedback, I had edit notes consolidated and I started the process of editing based on beta reader feedback. Now I am still in that process as I speak here, and I also made sure to thank my beta readers every week for their participation because they're doing this for free and it really is a big help. Now something that you should know beforehand is that some betas won't participate the whole way through, and that can be with or without notice, and that really is just something that you have to deal with. This is why even though I wanted 8 beta readers, I started off with 11 and then ended up with 8 miraculously by the end. So some writers do multiple rounds of beta reader edits. I'm still not completely sure at the moment, but I feel like I'm only going to be doing one. I'm still grappling with maybe sending the manuscript to one more person, a critique partner, or someone who maybe was a beta reader who wouldn't mind reading again. But I'm still thinking about that. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, this is the first time that I've done this, that I've done the critique partner, alpha reader, beta reader process. So yeah, don't take me as an expert. I'm just sharing what my experience was, the process that I decided to follow, and it actually worked for me. I feel like my book is so much better now. It's still in the process, but it will be so much better than when it started off. So yeah, those are my tips. Well, not really my tips, my process for critique partners, alpha readers, and beta readers. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and remember to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell if you want weekly writing advice videos. As always, you can find me on my website, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. All the links are listed below, and I will see you guys in next week's video. Bye!